Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today it is episode 95, where we are talking Wicked for Good, the conclusion to the Wicked series, or two-parters, or whatever you want to call it. Although they are maybe announcing a future project, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I hope you are all doing well. What a week it has been. Busy with work. I saw 3 movies this week. I've watched tons of stuff. I'm excited to talk about it all with you today. I hope you're having a good week like myself, and it's going to be a fun episode today. We have a lot to cover. Before we get into the news section, and then of course the Wicked for Good review, I do want to just say new YouTube video will be dropping soon, where I'm basically going to ask the question, do my childhood favorites hold up? Or some of my childhood favorites. Have a very fun selection of movies that I'm going to chat about. It's going to be a blast. I'm hoping to put it out maybe next Friday or maybe next Saturday to end the month of November in a fun way, but we'll see when it's able to drop. If it's an early December thing, that's fine. And for today, timestamps below. Obviously, this is, a big movie. You don't want it spoiled for you, so just keep in mind I've put timestamps below, whether you're on YouTube or the streaming apps. You can listen to just the non-spoiler section where I keep it very thematic, technical, sort of stepping back and looking at this movie as an IP, where I think this movie kind of falls short, but we'll get into all that today. And of course, we'll finish the episode with what else I watched. Lots of good stuff to talk about there, including The Running Man, Sentimental Value, some other stuff. So it's going to be a blast. But for now, let's jump into the news. Well, our first piece of news actually came last week, and I forgot to talk about it, but I do want to touch on it today because Pokerface has been canceled by Peacock after only 2 seasons. However, Rian Johnson is pitching a new version of the series with Peter Dinklage taking over as Detective Charlie Cale. So this is very interesting because Natasha Lyonne and Rian Johnson had a really good working relationship, and Pokerface was largely successful from what I know. I know it had very good streaming numbers, and the show was a big hit. I know it even got nominated for some awards, maybe even won some of them. And, Rian Johnson, very good at the murder mystery stuff. So this came as a bit of a shock. Another piece of this, essentially they are more recasting and restarting the show with Peter Dinklage stepping in. And I saw someone comment that said there's a 65% chance, random number, don't worry, that Johnson has probably done this with Natasha Lyonne because of the AI stuff. Now, if you don't know, Natasha Lyonne is very involved with sort of using AI in the arts and trying to find ways for AI to not be an enemy to the arts, and instead it can be used by artists, but it's kind of in a stupid way. And she's even going to be in some AI generated films. And Rian Johnson, very publicly against AI. He just today had a Hollywood Reporter thing come out this weekend that he hates AI. He was talking about the future of his career. They're going to do a 4th Knives Out movie probably. His Star Wars trilogy is dead. Just a ton to take from that article, but the big takeaway, Rian Johnson hates AI with a burning passion. I love him. The Last Jedi, always my favorite Star Wars movie, Rian Johnson. I'm kidding, but I do really like that he likes to shit on AI essentially. And you know what? Looper is a really good movie. I will stand up for Looper. I watched it a couple years ago. I thrifted it at Value Village here in Canada, but it's really interesting when you see these kind of creative relationships fall apart over, really, it is like a moral practice, I guess, in the use of AI and AI generated things, because we've just had this huge strike thing a couple of years ago, and it was sort of supposed to solve things, but it looks like it hasn't in a lot of ways because AI is still very much moving forward. And I do think a lot of people are scared of the direction that it's going in, and I don't blame them. I am as well. I mean, Coca-Cola just put out their second AI generated ad, which I think I spoke about. And the other night when I was seeing The Running Man, which we'll talk about later, it's funny because the Coca-Cola commercial started and the 2 guys beside me were like, how did they manage to make it look worse than last year? And I was like, that's very fun and kind of encouraging to see 2 randos in the audience, beside me being like, oh, these AI ads look like shit. And they sort of had a little AI discussion after, being like, oh, it's so gross and it's just such a stupid thing. And I was like, hell yeah, based, brother, based. But this is very interesting. Like I said, when you see these working relationships sort of crumble over these moral differences or these practice differences, and I think it's for the best that Rian Johnson is ditching Natasha Lyonne in the past. But our next story, some good news, comes from Justin Kroll on Twitter, who is a reporter, of course. He said, after saying they were aiming for a fresh new take for their next Star Trek movie, Paramount has found that duo to boldly go where no director has gone before, as Goldstein and Daly are on board to write and direct a new original Star Trek picture. I think this is a great choice. If you don't know that directing duo, they did Game Night and they did the Dungeons and Dragons movie. It didn't do like fantastically commercially, but it was a huge hit among fans and it has a major cult following now, and they've always talked about going back to that franchise. But I do like that they found a little bit of a home in the Star Trek franchise, because this could be really fun. They could really sort of revitalize it, take it away from all the weird Paramount shows that they have going on right now that it feels like more people hate than more people like. You know, the below decks or lower decks, whatever. Star Trek 1, Picard, I know it started a little rough and it's like kind of good, but it's bad at the same time. And then they had that Area 63, Area 51, Area 31 movie with Michelle Yeoh. That was like the worst Star Trek thing of all time. And Michelle Yeoh, we will talk about her today because, oh boy, she is interesting and Wicked for Good, to say in the least. But these two guys are really funny. I think they could bring a really good levity and new kind of energy to the Star Trek franchise. I'm very curious what sort of avenue they're going to go down, whether it is the like legacy characters or they're going to do just a whole new story. I'm kind of hoping that's the way they're going to go. It's just like, give us a new thing in the Star Trek universe. Don't worry or don't rely about the older characters, you know, like the J.J. Abrams ones. I actually like the first one and Beyond a lot. Star Trek Into Darkness, I feel like, I don't know, I don't have great memories of it. I haven't watched those movies in forever, probably like pre-COVID, I would say, but I remember seeing Star Trek Beyond with my brother in theaters, and we both had a lot of fun, and we were like, oh, that was a blast. It was really funny, and the first one I still think is like pretty good, and it's sort of interesting how Star Trek and Star Wars have almost swapped places, but now they're both just TV shows in a lot of ways, so we'll see how this ends up. I actually have weirdly a lot of faith that this is going to be fun, it's going to be entertaining, it's going to be good. I mean, it's going to be lighthearted, humorous, it's going to be really deep and emotional, have good group dynamics. That's what those guys do so well. On the show, I've talked about it before. I've watched Game Night for the very first time this summer when I was flying back from Europe, and it was absolutely hilarious. Like, there were moments where I was struggling to keep my laughter to myself because I was just being so loud. But our next story, Survivor 50, will premiere on Wednesday, February 25th with a 3-hour episode. The 2 weeks prior, it will also air 10 encore episodes from the past seasons highlighting some members of the 50 cast. It's really cool that they're doing that. Weirdly enough, I saw an ad the other day for Pluto TV, and they have 2 seasons of Survivor on there, which I find very funny that they have 2 seasons only out of 49. So I don't know. Survivor's really weird streaming wise in Canada. Like, you can on Amazon watch, I think it's season 40 and after, 41 and after, I believe. Or is it just Paramount Plus? I think it's actually only on Paramount Plus that you can watch them all in Canada, if even, because one time I got Paramount Plus, I couldn't watch them all, so I was like, what the hell are we doing here? It's like only after 36, and I wanted to go back from the start, so I have been watching them in a less than legal manner, and I only have actually one Survivor episode of Old to talk about this week, which we'll chat about later, but this is really cool. A 3-hour premiere is a lot. That is a very long premiere. With commercials, it's probably going to feel like 6 hours, but I am excited, and I think it's because there's 24 contestants on season 50, so it's going to be multiple tribal councils, maybe even 2 tribal councils in the very first episode at least, or they're going to split into like multiple tribes and then send one tribe home right away, be like, losers, go home, you're done, you're out of the game, and we shrink down to 16 immediately, or 18 or whatever it might be. But obviously I'm a little optimistic. I would love to have a 2-tribe season 50, but I already know it's 3 tribes, which sucks. Yeah, you know what, we'll get it more into my Survivor 49 thoughts later in the episode, of course, but this is very fun. I'm excited for 3 hours, but let's get into our next story. Michael Mann has his Public Enemy star Christian Bale circling a major role alongside Leonardo DiCaprio in Heat 2. Amazon MGM's United Artists will start production next year on the second installment of Mann's 1995 heist classic. Now, it's rumored that he's playing Val Kilmer's character, maybe when he's older, I guess, and he's moved on from the Heat, of course, you know, because this is a sequel where we will be flashing forward, we'll be flashing back, so I think it's Austin Butler playing the young version, Christian Bale will be playing the old version. I'm not really sure how it's going to work because I haven't read the book and I'm happy I haven't read the book because I don't want spoilers for Heat 2. I know the book's not great is kind of the impression I've gotten, but I haven't gotten to the point where I really want to read it. I want to rewatch Heat very soon, actually. I feel like I watched it for the first time this year, and I'm already kind of itching for a rewatch because it's just that good. I mean, it's a 3-hour movie that flies by. Watching it in the context of being a GTA 5 player growing up, because so much of Heat inspired GTA 5, really, like the heists of running through Los Angeles and getting back in the game and all this stuff, and like the dirty cops or whatever it might be, you know, it's very fun. I think Christian Bale being in this cast is another huge addition. I mean, really, the cast is pretty wild now. It's looking like it's going to be Leonardo DiCaprio, Austin Butler, Adam Driver, Christian Bale, 4 huge hitters right there alone. I can't remember the rest of the cast, but it's really ginormous. I can't wait for this thing to get off the ground because it could be absolutely major, but we'll see where the pieces fall when they land when they fall. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's get into our final news story of the week before we get into Wicked for Good, because I have a lot to say, so I want to make sure I have adequate time to speak about it. Exclusive from Deadline this week, Sadie Sink will join the cast of the next Avengers movie that shoots in London later in 2026. Sink stars in Spider-Man Brand New Day, which is scheduled to open July 31st. It's unclear who she's playing, but my theory from her being in Spider-Man and then probably being in Secret Wars, I would say, because that's going to be the second Avengers movie that we're getting and they're going to film later in 2026. I think she's playing Jean Grey. That was kind of the initial rumor, is she's playing an X-Men character, and I think it is Jean Grey, which is strange because they're really going to go for a young X-Men cast. Then she's about 22, 24. I think she's like a couple years younger than I am, really, and Tom Holland's older than me. I think he's 29. So I hope, you know, she's not a love interest in the movie. That would be interesting. Or is she Gwen Stacy? Are they going to do some kind of team up? I don't really know, but I think the fact that she's going to be in an Avengers movie is kind of a large indication, or at least a hint of what we're probably going to get with her, that it's most likely an X-Men character, because I think they will use Spider-Man as a good gateway to introduce the X-Men and mutants, and I'm not sure how much crossover there's going to be in Spider-Man Brand New Day with like Battle World, and it's now dropping before Avengers Doomsday, so what's the introduction for that movie going to be like? It's going to be a really weird, because originally Avengers Doomsday was going to come before Spider-Man, and Spider-Man was going to be a really like bridging movie between the two, but maybe there was big rewrites. I'm not sure. Marvel's in a really weird like kind of flow state right now where everything's very fluid. I mean, things are getting delayed left and right. Things are being renewed. Just this week, Lanterns was officially confirmed. It is coming out after Supergirl later in the year. I'm not that bothered by it. I think it'll be interesting to get a little bit of a break between DC projects, like really just give us some breathing room. Are people going to forget about it? Or is it like, yeah, good, take your time? I think that's more likely, that it's like good, they're going to give this show adequate time to do reshoots or figuring out how they want to follow up Supergirl, you know, all that stuff. It's nicer to get projects that are taking their time with delays and they're not afraid to really work it out before they release it to the public. I mean, Spider-Man Brand New Day, they were, you know, kind of pushing it and kicking it down the road for a little bit, but I'm happy seems like it's on track. I know Tom Holland had that little injury where he got concussed from hitting his head on something really badly, had to be rushed to hospital. They had to shoot down filming, but I don't think it set it back too much, and I think the script was like mostly done before they started filming. So I don't know. I'm actually really excited. I mean, we got a bunch of stuff for the Odyssey this week. It looks amazing. Before Avatar, they're going to play a 5-minute like prologue type thing, or a preview that Christopher Nolan tends to do. I'm very excited for that. Tom Holland looks great in it. Everybody in the cast actually looks great in it. It's going to be a very Tom Holland heavy summer, but I think that's all I have for the news this week, really. Reminder, once again, timestamps below if you only want to listen to the non-spoiler section for Wicked for Good, because it's a big movie. I mean, if you're hesitant about going to see it, you can check out the non-spoiler section. It's my opinion on this movie, of course, and I usually don't say like, oh, this is just my opinion, but almost everyone I follow on Letterboxd who has given this a negative review, all of these other actual critics, I'm not a critic, I'm someone that just has a movie blog, but the actual critics I follow who legitimately critique movies and were maybe negative about the film, RIP to their mentions and their comments, because Wicked fans are kind of vicious. But what do you say? Should we just talk about Wicked for Good? Let's talk about it. Wicked for Good is a 2025 musical fantasy coming in at 2 hours, 17 minutes. It is directed by John M. Chu, who of course did part 1, written by Winnie Holtzman and Dana Fox on a budget of $150 million. Reviews are currently pretty positive, I guess, but this is still very early and it tends to change. But IMDb currently has 7.4, 69% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 97% audience score. Very funny because, Wicked fans kind of just see this, give it 5 stars immediately. 3.9 average on Letterboxd with a 5-star mode. The synopsis for Wicked for Good: an angry mob rises against the Wicked Witch. Glinda and Elphaba will need to come together one final time. With their singular friendship now the fulcrum of their futures, they will need to truly see each other with honesty and empathy if they are to change themselves and all of Oz for good. The film stars Ariana Grande as Glinda, Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero, Jeff Goldblum as the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible, Ethan Slater as Bach, Marissa Bode as Nessa, and a whole whack of other people. But let's just rip the band-aid off. Okay, last year I reviewed Wicked Part 1. I didn't love it, and it was actually probably one of the hardest movies I've ever had to review on the show because I really struggle when it's a movie that I think is kind of just fine and let me down. I didn't have huge expectations for Wicked. I also had a really bad audience where 4 people were recording the entire film. Last night, very different experience. I was kind of like, oh, okay, maybe part 2 will be good. I watched it. I thought it was really bad. I actually thought it was quite bad. It really fell flat for me completely. And I have a lot of thoughts on last year. I really struggled to just string things together during Wicked Part 1 because it's just so mediocre and kind of let me down. And I'm like, yeah, all right, fine, whatever, I guess. Versus Wicked Part 2 or Wicked for Good, I guess. I have so many thoughts. Let's just get into it, starting with the performances. Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba. I thought she was fantastic in the first one. I think she's almost kind of bored in this one, or she's just being drowned out by the material because she's really let down by the writing. It's a case where an actress can only do so much for the source material and for the actual script that they've adapted from the source material, as well as the directing just really kind of lets her down and doesn't utilize her to any really good way to bring some sparks. And if anything, Ariana Grande as Glinda, I would say she's the lead of this film. Cynthia Erivo is playing way more as Elphaba as a supporting role in this film, so I think come Oscar time, I will be a little bit curious about how they decide to run for the second film, because this is much more a Glinda story than it is Elphaba for me. But Ariana Grande, let's talk about her. I think she's a lot better in the first one. She's a lot more fun. There's a lot more stuff for her to really do here dramatically and a lot more substance to chew on, which is, it's kind of nice to really change it up. But she just kind of acts like a child the entire time. It's kind of fun and playful and you get it because she's quirky and popular in the first one. Versus this one, she kind of plays it like a 12-year-old the whole time, and probably 75% of the way through, I was like, I'm kind of getting a little annoyed by Ariana Grande, and she's so high-pitched, squealy, playing it like a kid, and it felt very at odds with the tonality of the material. So it's a really strange sensation because you can tell how talented this cast is. Everyone here is a goddamn superstar. I mean, we have Oscar winners on this cast. Michelle Yeoh is an Oscar winner, and yet it feels like we're kind of drowning out all of our stars and everyone is sort of sinking and they're really struggling to keep up because the story is so breakneck. Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero. Look, I don't think Jonathan Bailey is a great actor in general. I think Jurassic World Rebirth, I really didn't like him, and Wicked Part 1, I thought he was kind of boring and bland. His song, unfortunately, Dancing Through Life, I think is one of the moments from Wicked Part 1 that I would cut out because that movie is so long. And here, I thought he was very stiff once again, but those contact lenses he's wearing are so distracting. It's like Joseph Quinn in Fantastic Four, where it's I know you don't have blue eyes, and it's you're staring at me and it's killing me. And maybe the color grading doesn't help to subdue it at all because it's so flat and gray, but I also found he just had no chemistry with either Ariana Grande or Cynthia Erivo. It's just the love sparks are not there, man. And same with Ethan Slater as Bach. Holy dear God, it was very rough. He has one big scene with Ness and Elphaba that I was sort of shocked how bad it was playing, and it just felt so flat for me. But probably the performance, I think a lot of people are going to talk about Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible. Look, I love Michelle Yeoh. When she won the Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once, I was borderline in tears. I was so happy for her. I was like, yes, one of the standout performances of the 2020s by far. She's fantastic. But here, oh my God, she cannot sing. She cannot keep up. She can't keep the pacing. It's just like an energy vortex every single time she's on screen. And it's so bad. And she's kind of the villain of these stories. And yet her character is so underdeveloped, you could say. Like about 3/4 of the way through, I was like, oh wait, she's the villain. Yeah, like she's the one we should be rooting against. And yet I feel like she's almost barely here. It's really weird dynamics, but we will get into the script, and I have a lot of script issues. And then final person I just want to talk about is Jeff Goldblum as the wizard. Weirdly, some of his moments were almost my most enjoyable moments in this movie. Like there's one musical number called Wonderful that I was like, okay, maybe this is like the best song. And it's kind of fun in moments. But other than that, I found him just kind of boring, and he seems kind of tired, and there's a big character arc involving him that I was like, why are we doing it now? And why not earlier? But I do want to talk about my audience experience, because it was a very, interesting night at the movie theaters where I was in a packed screening. It was full of Wicked fans, almost everyone wearing a t-shirt, wearing some kind of pink or green or whatever it was. And that's fun to be a part of that experience. I love going to like big event cinema, but I will say much more respectful audience this time around. Maybe it's that I'm in Toronto. No photos. I saw someone tried to take a photo of the title card and it quickly switched away, and I was like, haha, fuck you. But you know what? Nobody was really talking. A couple people came in late, of course, but that happens regularly. Everyone was very respectful, and I really, really appreciated that. However, what was actually interesting about my audience reaction, I could kind of feel the energy leaving the room, and you do get that with these big packed screenings. There's moments where people want to clap, people are crying. There were sniffles at the end, of course, but a couple times a song would finish and maybe two people would clap, and it would like almost start an applause, but then people would just like, you could tell they didn't really want to. All of the laughs were very weak in this film. There was one moment of laughter with Jeff Goldblum that I was like, okay, that's the one. That's the funniest part of the movie for this audience. Other than that, a lot of the jokes felt like they weren't fully landing. There was not a lot of laughter around me. So I don't know. It's very interesting to take a temperature of the room and kind of see how things are landing for these diehard fans that are around me. I said to my girlfriend, that was fucking awful. I really didn't enjoy that. And the woman in front of me turned around. I could tell she was a diehard fan. And I was like, oh fuck, I should have waited till I was outside, because I feel bad, trashing on it. It's not fun trashing on things that people enjoy. But okay, that's my theater reaction. Let's talk about the story of Wicked for Good. Part 1 versus Part 2 story. It's sort of shocking how less engaging this one is, and how thematically a lot of the same issues are popping up. But Part 2 is really sort of a dead end to the story. And of course, the common sentiment that everyone says is, of the stage adaptation, the first half, or whatever you want to call it, up to Defying Gravity, is essentially the good part of the musical. That's what everyone I've, read online, everyone that I know that has seen it has sort of hinted at that. And one of my friends, he said that he was like, oh, Part 1, is going to be way more entertaining. And he kind of called it that Part 2 is probably not going to be very good because the stage adaptation is the thing. So this one is just so uninteresting, and basically it goes for this kind of full cameo nostalgia fest, and it's 50% intro catching us up on the 5 years from Part 1 to Part 2. The other 50% is kind of, hey, remember this from The Wizard of Oz, and playing catch up because they have to really work to tie up so many loose ends towards the end. One of the biggest things though, one of my biggest complaints by far about these movies, John M. Chu, the director, I almost feel bad for him because he feels stuck, and it feels like a lack of magic, a lack of vision. It's almost like he has no clue what to do with this source material. It's that he's like not sure what's going to play with the fans, what's the really important stuff, what's the unimportant stuff. He's not really sure where to make the incision for this big surgical operation on this giant Broadway stage that so many people love, or this Broadway show, pardon me. And it's really interesting to see how flat it kind of plays. And the way he directs musical numbers is depressing. The camera movement, we have some trouble. Almost every musical number, the camera is just slowly panning around and moving around our characters, whether it's in a 360 or it's just hovering in the same spot. If it's a moment of dialogue where people are confronting each other, it's just handheld over the shoulder, medium close-ups with shaky cam. I do want to specifically highlight, No Place Like Home. One of the worst musical numbers I have seen directing wise. I think Cynthia Erivo, like, she's doing what she can. She can only bail out John M. Chu so much. One of the worst directed musical numbers I can remember, because he's holding a medium close up on Cynthia for probably 3 minutes. And I was just like, dude, do something. In my head, I'm like, do something. Change it up. It's just he's occasionally cutting to other people's reaction shots in the exact same shot. Medium close up, medium close up, medium close up. And it's just mind blowing how he doesn't feel the need to change it up or do some camera movements. And when he does, it's just a 360 kind of hovering around the room or the scene, or trying to play it like a one shot where in another song it's Ariana Grande moving through her apartment or the wedding, what do you even call that? The wedding room, kind of where she's getting ready, I guess the bridal suite. And it's just so kind of shocking and appalling to me that we get a $150 million musical from a director who does not know what the hell he's doing. Honestly, Now You See Me 2 is better directed than Wicked for Good. And I never thought I would say that in a million years, because I really dislike the Now You See Me films, but it's sort of mind-blowing. Like, there's an action sequence, not to give anything away, between Glinda and Elphaba where they're having this kind of play fight with a broom and a wand, and it was hilarious how it felt like an episode of The Mandalorian, or I don't know, Ahsoka or The Acolyte, in that Disney Plus sort of very slow, artificial, shaky cam, poorly choreographed, very unathletic moving around, you know, or very undynamic, I guess you could say, because clearly Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, I think if they had a better director, they could totally pull off the action stuff. You know, they're like dancers, or, you know, musical, they're athletic, they can do it. It's just, it's so clear that the director is like, all right, just kind of do this weak ass sword fighter. It's like, yeah, we'll just figure it out on the day. It just feels like there's no real plan, and we're just rushing through all of these moments to get to the third act, which the third act is just cramming. Tonally, this movie is all over the place. There's some very, very serious moments, and I do appreciate that this movie is trying to change it up and dig into the serious stuff. You know, it's not a 1-star movie from me, because there are serious efforts in the material to be like, no, this is the serious one where we need to address things and the rise and fall of power, blah, blah, blah. I'll get to the themes in a moment, but there's some serious undercutting of serious moments with stupid jokes or unfunny jokes where I'm like, really? Like, why can't we just let people flex their dramatic muscles for the entire scene and really bring the hammer down? Like, you're not going to lose the audience. I think people actually appreciate it, in my screening at least, the dramatic moments. People seem to really be responsive to that, and you could feel it in the room with like a couple of sort of little gasps, or at least definitely there was someone behind me who had no clue what happens in Wicked, what happens in the book or the stage play. I knew where this was going just from my girlfriend reading the book and telling me like what the book goes by, and I was like, okay, so that's probably what the musical is going to be, or the film rather. But it was just very shocking to me how poorly it's balancing the silliness and the drama, and it was kind of let down. I think part 1 does a much better job of balancing that drama, John M. Chu, and he kind of loses it here. And part 1, like, credit to John M. Chu, part 1 does feel a little bit better now in hindsight. I think part 2 is just such a step down visually, tonally, script wise, everything, all aspects. I feel like part 2, even the performances, which I hate to say because the performances are very good in part 1, or at least the 2 main stars. I think everyone else is pretty mediocre, but it's very strange. And the songs in part 2 as well, so unmemorable. There was maybe 1 or 2 that I was like, okay, these are kind of catchy, but I'm gonna sound like a dumbass here because it's a musical, of course, but there's no real rationale for when they're singing versus talking. There would be like little singing moments that were 15 seconds long, and I'm like, oh cool, a song's starting now, finally. And then they would just go back to talking, and I was like, okay, I get it's a musical, but they don't have to sing everything. And it just feels like the script doesn't know when to really rush into the music, and the songs themselves that we do get in full length aren't catchy, and they're very unmemorable. So it was a little bit of a disappointment. But I mean, just a writing standpoint, as you can gather, of course, the script is a mess. I think, you know, this was kind of dead on arrival with how poor of an adaptation this second half is, I guess you can say, of the stage play. Like, at the end of the day, I think this should have been one long 3-hour movie with an intermission in the middle, and that would have drawn people for a fun time at the movie theaters where they're like, oh, we're gonna go see this long musical adaptation. But this version, part 2, I feel like it doesn't really know what it wants to be because it buckles under the weight of the material. Like, it feels so tethered to not only the Wizard of Oz, and I was actually kind of shocked how stuck it is to the Wizard of Oz, but to the musical or the stage adaptation that it has to hit those same steps, and it's just an adaptation of a book. So it feels like almost exclusionary, where it's like, well, if you haven't seen the other thing, you're definitely not going to like this. Like I'm really not sure. If you're not a fan of the Broadway musical, I don't know how you're really going to get enjoyment out of this. Like obviously, anything can be fun, but it just feels like there's a lot that is only really catering to the fans, and they're trying to hit all these moments, which makes it feel just incredibly rushed. And like I said, the first 50% feels like, we have to introduce everyone back again and say, this is Bach, who is now the blah, blah, blah. And Ness, since your father, blah, 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 now you're the blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of those character introductions where they're literally telling you their title. And it's like, why are we telling people in the room? They clearly know what the updates are. And it's just the very sort of second screenwriting or the very exposition heavy. But I do want to talk about sort of the big emotional moments and sort of the thematic stuff. And this is a movie that at times part one did this, but it's about how leaders use their power to level their personal scores. I would say this one a lot more. Sort of it is reflecting real life, of course, where fascist leaders use their power for their own advantage and for their personal scores that they have to settle. And in this film, from an emotional standpoint and a thematic standpoint, Elphaba's personality and her sort of character development really lacked for me. I felt like by the end of the film, I didn't really know her. And it's very strange how, Letterboxd lists Ariana Grande first instead of Cynthia Erivo. Ariana Grande feels like much more of a fully fleshed out character here, whereas Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, I was really curious by some of the moments they're making her do, and it feels like there is this outside source pushing her towards these big character moments, and there's just a real lack of emotional breathing room here because we have to move at such a breakneck pace. This movie felt long, but it also felt rushed. It was really interesting how this is almost 30 minutes shorter than the first film, and yet it felt the same in length to me. I had to check my watch with like an hour left, and I was like, oh my God, there's still 60 minutes. I thought this was wrapping up right now, and it just kind of keeps going. There's multiple endings. It was really frustrating how it was just like, oh, this could be an ending, this could be an ending, this could be an ending, but it's actually just wrapping up all of these storylines over and over because it can't leave anything unsolved. And instead of pacing it out over the movie and wrapping up these, storylines over the course of the film, it's like, oh shit, we have 20 minutes left. We need to wrap this all up. And then we're just going to rush through everyone else so we can just stick with Glinda and Elphaba. And it's very disappointing because there's other capable actors here who would be interesting to see them in these big moments. And look, the big moments really let me down. There's romance in this film where I think the chemistry is just non-existent. It's so stiff. This movie has one of, the most uncomfortable and poorly put together romance scenes I have seen in a while in a film. And it is interesting to compare it to the book. And I know it's completely unfair to compare it to the book because they are very different. But I asked my girlfriend, like, oh, does it end like that in the book? Or, what's the vibes of the book? And she told me that like Glinda and Elphaba are really not friends in the book. And Elphaba's journey, totally different. You get all of her backstory, way more of her childhood and focus on her. It was very fascinating. I don't know. There's a lot of differences from the book. Of course, they're not doing a direct adaptation of the book because it's an adaptation of the stage musical, but it is very fun to go back and look at the source material and then look at the source material of that source material. But overall, look, thematically, very much it's all over the place. I get they're trying to show the implications of fascism and the fall of like kind of false leaders, but it feels very dumbed down and shrunk and not fully developed and lacks any real complexity. One theme I did sort of like enjoy, or I was like, oh, interesting that they're actually doing this right now, but again, it doesn't feel fully served, is this idea of women of color giving up their dreams and sort of accepting the villain role to push on, whether it's a white woman or a white passing woman, and push them on to do the good that the person of color wants to do because they know they're limited in their public perception and people are just going to see them as a villain. So it's like honest moment of what we get in real life a lot of times, that people are not willing to accept people of color in these powerful positions. And I appreciate that John M. Chu and the screenwriters are actually trying to touch on that in this film. But there's also the idea that everything you ever wished for coming true won't give you true happiness. I think that's almost fully developed here, that it doesn't feel fully formed with Glinda, and it's a little bit choppy. There's a flashback in this movie that I thought was so terrible. But look, let's finish on maybe the visuals. CGI slop and gloss, shaky cam coloring, so bland. It's amazing how every millimeter of the screen is fully lit in this movie. And then we have a couple of musical numbers where you can't see anything. It's dark as possible. And Cynthia Erivo's makeup is totally clashing with the color palette here. I think they should have gone for a really brighter green in the blue moments, and you're really losing her, and it brings it down. And it's just so disappointing. There's one musical number in this called No Good Deed Goes Unpunished, and the CGI and the lighting and all of the mixing and everything, I was just appalled. It was one of the most ghastly things I have seen this year. But look, I do want to finish sort of on Oscar discussion, and we'll read some Letterboxd reviews, then I'll give you my 2 stars and a wish. But let's talk Oscars. Probably the only 2 that it gets are Ariana Grande, possibly, and then definitely I would still say costuming or like hair and makeup. I could see all of those still nominated because the costuming won last year. Best Picture, Cynthia Erivo. Everything else, Best Director, I actually see it not making it. I think there are other movies that are going to, sneak in. A lot of discussion of maybe Jay Kelly snipping in over Wicked for Good now that Wicked for Good is critically not doing great. But look, you can't just define movies by Oscar season, but it of course was a huge factor at the Oscars last year with like 10 nominations or whatever. But at the same time, Amelia Perez got nominated a record amount of times almost, so Wicked for Good isn't a shocker. I want to read you some funny Letterboxd reviews about Wicked for Good, starting with Kenzie Vanunu, who said, Wicked for Good, the worst thing to happen to witches since Salem. Yeah, really, I mean, stocks are at an all-time low for witches right now. Next up, Jack Mayer, who gave it half a star. The theater community is about to get their very own The Rise of Skywalker. Everyone take cover. It's the exact same. We're rushing, and yet the movie feels so long, and it's just like bumbling around in this final chapter of a storyline. Next up, we have Lindsay Romaine, who gave it 1.5 stars. She said, new songs are all like, quote, I am in a forest, there's soil here, and time to pop the bubble, pretty girl. Yeah, the new songs just have some genuinely terrible writing. It's sort of unbelievable. Louis Peitzman gave it 2.5 stars. Ariana Grande is so good, she can even sell lyrics like, quote, it's hard to unsee what you've seen. Stephen Schwartz, I just want to talk. Yeah. Oh my God. It's mind-blowing how Ariana Grande is a genuine movie star and can act her way out of some terrible source material. Adam gave this 2 stars, saying, drinking game. Take a shot every time someone says, wait just a clock tick, and you will not be walking out of the theater. Yeah, I thought about that several times during the movie. Apparently in the stage adaptation, a clock plays a huge factor in the first half. I didn't see any of that in like the first, part 1, Wicked part 1, the movie, so I guess it's not really important. But finally, Fred gave it 2 stars. He said, I accept that to criticize this movie is mainly to criticize the flaws it's inherited from the second half of the stage musical, but that's not my problem. The tunes aren't good enough, the plot is often nonsensical, and in the meantime, I was barely having any fun. To be clear, I take no pride or joy in delivering this news. It's really, shocking how much of a dive in quality it is compared to the first one. My 2 stars and a wish. Star number 1, I guess Ariana and Cynthia are pretty okay in it. I would say more Ariana. Cynthia seems a little bit checked out, and the source material is just not helping her at all. Star number 2, there are 2 songs that I kind of liked with Wonderful and No Good Deed Goes Unpunished, but otherwise, brutal songs, very uninteresting. My wish, I just wish they honestly went in a completely different direction with this franchise or this IP. Make it a 3-hour movie with an intermission instead of 2 films, different director, different visuals, make it way more grounded and less CGI. But look, overall, I got my hopes up that maybe we could be better than the first, but they filmed these back to back, so this is also really bad. Or, the first one's not really bad. I think the first one is fine, but this one was really bad for me. It feels like a big IP franchise brain stuck to nostalgia bait. Wicked for Good. I hope we are done with Wicked for good. Just kidding. Stephen Schwartz says he and Winnie Holtzman are developing a new Wicked project where it wouldn't be a sequel to Glinda and Elphaba's story, but instead a new idea that expands Oz in a new direction. God help us. Okay, Wicked for Good. I initially gave it 2.5 stars, but after thinking about it, there's really just not much I enjoyed here. It's so flat. It's so big Hollywood slop. It just feels like there's no creativity or artistry or love here. I gave Wicked for Good 2 stars out of 5. Let's move into spoilers. Alrighty, spoilers for Wicked for Good. You have been warned. Let's talk about the Wizard of Oz inclusions, the transformations, how it plays, and hiding Dorothy's face. So, the Wizard of Oz, if you don't know, Wicked is like the Wizard of Oz from the other point of view. Dorothy is kind of the villain almost of this movie in a funny way, like just the way they portray her in the melting scene, you know, where, oh, Elphaba, she's melting because I'm melting. Dorothy walks away with her broom after, like, celebrating she killed her, and it kind of made me laugh a little bit. I was like, holy shit, they just turned this, 14-year-old girl or whatever into a villain? Kind of goofy, but look, they hyped up a few weeks ago, Coleman Domingo is voicing the lion, and he probably has 4 lines in this. He maybe has 30 seconds of screen time total, if even. I was shocked how little they included him, and very disappointing to get a huge name like that and just sort of chuck him in the background and use him as dangling keys in front of a baby of, remember the lion from The Wizard of Oz in the first movie that was, there for 10 seconds? Very strange. But then I do want to talk about all the transformations. If you don't know, Bach transforms into the Tin Man. The cub from the first movie rather, turns into the Heartless Lion or the Scared Lion. And then you have Fiyero, who transforms into the Scarecrow. All of the transformations we see, the 2 we see rather, were horrendous. I was laughing at how comically goofy they were, like all of the metal being shown in the room constantly, of all the tin in Nessa's office because she's governor now. They're like, the tin's gonna happen, and they're teasing it, and then Bach shows up and he's just all of a sudden this like weird like neo-Nazi type vibe guy. It's very funny how, seeing your Wizard of Oz characters turned on themselves like they are in the book, because the book's about Elphaba. But I have to talk about the Fiyero transformation. It's done in like black and white and these like flashes, and it was just so early 2000s kind of goofy editing that I could not believe they were actually sticking with it. And it just, Cinema Joe said in his Letterboxd review, they yassified the Scarecrow. He has these like frosted tips and this weird like skin texture that it's not like the mask of the classic design, and it really, the designs don't work for me for the Scarecrow, of his clothing, of everything. It just, he looked so goofy, and he's in maybe 2 seconds. Like, they keep teasing and having the Scarecrow off screen when we know he's the Scarecrow. They can reveal that, and yet they decide to hide it for the very last moment. Now, not showing Dorothy's face at all. Really, I don't get the point. You hired an actor, you may as well just have someone play Dorothy, and instead of doing these awkward cut arounds where it's like, you kind of saw her go by, and you see her feet, and you see her like just in shadows, and it's just like blocking in such a weird way. Show the face. I don't care at this point. If you're gonna go full nostalgia jerking, just go full nostalgia jerking, John M. Chu. Now, some of the big moments that I really had issues with were, of course, the goodbye between Elphaba and Glinda, and the melting scene just really felt rushed and kind of frantic, and it's a weird moment where Elphaba is giving herself up because it's her whole character arc just feels so chopped up. And really, I mean, Elphaba just suddenly deciding she's not going to be nice anymore and she would just fake her death. I was like, okay, I feel like I haven't seen you in half this movie, but we're sort of just jumping to this conclusion instead of Glinda trying to help her in a really meaningful way, because she's like, no, you can do way more publicly in power. It's like, why not just take them down forever? But again, I don't know. I'm just like, why am I rewriting the script in my head? But I'm just saying, in the actual rhythm of the film, Elphaba's story was just very weird with the melting scene, and I was like, is she actually dead? Like, kind of a crazy ending for her. And then, of course, they're doing a fake out where Fiyero comes to find her. They run away together. I was very thankful there was a fake out, because it feels like Elphaba is just bound to this other source material that's like, no, we have to write it this way, where she runs away with him, or we have to write it this way. And there's just no flexibility in her character, and there's no flexibility in the story in general. They sort of just ditched the whole animals storyline, like the animals are losing the ability to talk and their rights are being restricted, so they all go literally underground for the entire movie because they want to hide them out of the way. And like the professor, she interacts with him once, the goat professor, which was one of my favorite parts of the first movie, her sympathy for the goat professor, and yet he has half a scene in this one, and he, doesn't learn how to talk again. He just walks back in the classroom at the end. What are we doing? How is Elphaba all trying to reverse this, or trying to help them to reverse it and learn how to speak again? again. Instead, it's just like the animals come back on their own after Elphaba goes away. So she's not really the hero for them. I don't know. It's very much, it's all over the place. Again, thematically, it's very underdeveloped. It's underwritten. The animals are sort of just forgotten about, which I really like the animal storyline from the first one. But here it's like, oh yeah, what do we do about the animals again? Right. Well, we'll just have her free them and they all run through the castle. But there's also one other big scene that I think it's like, oh, this is kind of interesting thematically, that Ness, Elphaba's sister, has probably the worst line of the movie when she says, oh, who left that door open, when she notices the door's open to go outside in her office. And then she goes out and she sees Elphaba there. And it was like, what was that? Like, she's like, who left that door open, in the most obvious way. And it's like, Jesus Christ, we are just dumbing this down as much as we can, really. But the whole scene with the dynamic between Bach, Ness, Elphaba, I don't know. It's kind of a mixed bag. It feels very rushed, like we have to get through this so we can just get back to Glinda and Elphaba as fast as possible. And it's really a bummer because I think there's some interesting material there with Ness using her power to basically get back at Bach, and then the spell goes wrong because she starts reading it and turns Bach into, tin, or she starts to shrink his heart and all the tin starts to stick to him or whatever, and Elphaba has to try to help, but it doesn't really work. Just a super strange dynamic in that scene, and how it's being blocked, how it's being blocked, blocking Bach. I guess that's kind of a bit of a joke. Somewhere there's a joke in there, but just sort of a calamity that all of a sudden, like, oh, it's interesting that Ness is now going to use her power to get back at Bach by restricting the rights of Munchkins, and then it feels like we don't really go anywhere with that. The whole Ness death scene is just so bad, where the tornado comes in. I was like, oh, here we go. Like, they're doing the Wizard of Oz now, and she gets crushed by a house, but as the house is falling on her, she's like, in just the most awkward scream, and it's like really bad CGI. It's really poorly lit. It's super ugly and was just a little bit funny. So a lot of the big moments really fall short and feel really flat. I spoke about the romance. Fiyero and Elphaba have one of the most awkward intimate scenes, or like a weird sort of romance song where they like half kiss and then they do kiss, and he reaches like around her over her shoulder, and I'm like, what is this weird embrace we have? Zero chemistry on screen. Absolutely nothing to go off of. It really put me off. I was like, Jonathan Bailey, such a good looking guy. Absolutely handsome, drop dead gorgeous. Literally the sexiest man alive. I guess I could say that now. Cynthia Erivo. I mean, she's gorgeous as Elphaba. Like, it's like, oh, these two very pretty people, and it feels like someone is like holding them at gunpoint, forcing them to hug, and there's just no matchmaking energy between their two characters because it feels so underwritten, and they've maybe met like twice in their entire life, I guess. So it's just a very boring and awkward, hilarious love scene. But I do just want to jump on the ending now. The father reveal. One of the most interesting things from the first film, I was always like, how are they going to reveal that Elphaba's father is actually the wizard? And we don't even get a real father scene or father reveal scene between Elphaba and the wizard. Instead, Glinda tells him, and he has to realize, oh my god, I killed my daughter. And then he goes on his journey because Glinda banishes him. Such a missed opportunity. What are we doing? Why not give us that big reveal of, oh, my father held this elixir bottle all the time? How does Glinda figure it out? Elphaba just doesn't care to bring it up or figure it out herself. I'm not really sure, but it's just such a wasted opportunity, because I think that could have been a very powerful moment where Elphaba confronts her real father, and it's like, how do you think I became like this? Because my mother, she cheated on my father, when in the book she actually like cheats with a poor guy that's coming through town or something like that. I don't know. But again, the book's very different. And the young CGI Jeff Goldblum, holy shit, what was that? That is like Twilight CGI, baby, levels of bad, young de-aging. It was so lifeless. It was so plastic and untextured. I was shocked. It was genuinely one of the worst scenes of the movie. But look, the ending, it feels like, again, they have to wrap everything up. We have Michelle Yeoh. Oh, and you'll be in this cage. We have Glinda becoming the, proper Glinda the good. And then we have Fiyero and Elphaba having having to run away together, all this stuff. They have to wrap and shrink the ending so much. And it's just like you're playing catch up and you can't just sit in the moment and appreciate like, oh wow, what a storyline of like Elphaba and Glinda's friendship. But it's just like, no, move. We need to wrap everything up. And it's so rushed. This movie feels like a real disaster to me. And it's just so poorly managed. I think that's all I have for spoilers, really. I could talk about this for hours, but I don't want to go on any longer. So again, Wicked for Good, 2 out of 5 stars. Let's get into what else I watched. Alrighty, what else I watched? I have 4 movies, 5 TV shows, and I started a comic book. The comic book I started was Thunderbolts No Quarter. I'm only like 2 pages in. I started reading it before bed last night, and then I was like, okay, I'm really tired, but I'm going to plan on reading it like ASAP, and I'll do a comic book collection read through this Sunday, hopefully for you guys. I'm very excited to talk about comic books again, but let's jump into TV shows because Survivor 49, Episode 8, Hot Grim Reaper, and then Episode 9, If You're Loyal to All, You're Loyal to None. Very weird thing happening in New Era Survivor, where almost every split tribal in the New Era, it has been black players voted out, and it's some weird like internal bias. We've literally talked about this last year, but MC brought it up and they edited it out of the show. They also didn't tell us what MC whispered at Tribal Council, which I find very shocking that they just don't feel the need to share the live tribal going down. I think it's because they wanted to edit that moment out. So a little bit spineless. I was very sad that MC went home last week, but Rizzo not using the idol, Savannah getting to not even vote and save an extra vote, power move. And then we have this week's episode where Sophie feels like the odd one out and she comes back to camp and everyone's like, oh, MC went home, why are you still here? And it was very awkward. Like no one could even act like they were happy to see Sophie. Disappointing, but then I don't know, I thought it was a strategically interesting episode how Rizzo and Savannah are playing it. They, bring Sophie in with other Sophie. We have Blue Sophie as well, and I think they need to really shake up the Tribal Council format because it is boring. I am bored listening to the contestants try to put together bad analogies and be like, oh, Jeff, it's so hard living out here. And they need to do something else because Tribal Council has become stale. Jeff, I hate being Survivor needs to go back to the old ways, but Jeff needs to go back to how he used to be and like grill these people, ask them uncomfortable questions because it's boring. I also watched an episode of Survivor Exile Island, season 12, episode 3. I honestly can't even remember what happened in it. So let's just move on to the Batman, the animated series. I'm kind of cruising through the series. I watched episodes 7 to 13, which had Firefly, the ventriloquist, Quiz Dude, this one other villain that I don't really know, Joker, and the introduction of Clayface. Really fun because like I said last week, it's sort of a good thing to follow up Batman, the animated series with. It feels very similar in a lot of ways. I would say way less sad Bruce Wayne, but it's fun to get this other interpretation of the character, and I really love the design of the Batman character in this and the design of all the characters actually, and I love that like early 2000s design of these animated shows. It's a lot of fun. I'm gonna really try and plow through it, maybe, I don't know, by January, February, around then, because I still have a lot of stuff to catch up with. But Pluribus season 1 episode 3, titled Hand Grenade, was a great episode. Again, I thought it was really fun. I'm gonna watch episode 4 this weekend. I said I wouldn't do spoilers in the What Else I Watched segment, but I just have to say Ray Seahorn is doing a lot of very interesting things in this show. I think she's just so damn good. Episode 3 was particularly heartbreaking in some moments, but I'm so curious to see where we're going to go in the future. I wonder how much Vince Gilligan is going to use actors from Breaking Bad in the show. I would love to see some crossover actors because they're so good in that show. But yeah, Pluribus, if you're not watching it, get on board. Let's talk about The Chair Company episode 6, titled Happy Birthday, a Friend. So we have a huge redesign going down with the mall that Ron is working on, and it's stressing him the hell out from Jeff. Stomach metal, that one of his coworkers swallowed a bunch of metal, and there's this great scene in the episode where it doesn't really have a huge impact on the episode or the show yet, but he's talking to the woman that comes into her office and she's like, I have to go to the hospital. I swallowed this thing. I swallowed a magnet. That's what it is. And slowly the metal on his office, like these staples or these paper clips or whatever, start drifting towards towards her. Such a stupid little gag that I thought was so funny, but we're actually like getting some huge reveals with Delaware and there being an actual office, and might we have someone that's behind Tekka? I don't know. I'm so excited for episode 7. It's like my favorite part of the week is watching The Chair Company, but let's move into movies. Alrighty, folks, I have 4 movies to talk about. 2 of them are new films. One of them is very old and one of them is from last year, starting with 16 Candles from 1984. I made a video on my social media talking about poorly aged films and talked about 16 Candles as the prime example. It's a very uncomfortable watch. There's some very bad racist humor with the character Long Duck Dong, who is a Chinese exchange student, sort of shockingly racist, and it's from 1984. You know, that wasn't that long ago, but oh my god, every time John Hughes would use a gong in the film, I nearly wanted to kill myself. So definitely not a John Hughes favorite of mine. Also, just on a writing level, it's not that interesting of a story. Like, our 2 main characters don't really interact until the end. I get that that's kind of the point, but it's just very unentertaining along the way. And he's trying to do this like fun vignette or fun sort of hopping around the room to different people, and everything converges at the end, but it's just done really clumsily. So I gave it 2 stars. Then I rewatched Wicked, the first film. Honestly, my opinion didn't really change that much. Like, I think it's a little bit worse on rewatch because it's just like, oh, the wow factor of, oh, okay, we're getting an adaptation. That's interesting. But the rewatching, it just feels so long. Oh my god, the movie felt like it was going on forever. There is some catchy songs and the performances from Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are pretty good, but the visuals, the direction, just like so bad. A lot like Wicked for good, but honestly a little bit better. So Wicked for better, I guess you could call it. But I thought going into it, I was like, oh, I'm excited to rewatch this because maybe I was harsh on it the first time because I was let down by the film and by my theater experience. But honestly, rewatching, I put my rating down half a star from 3.5 to 3 stars. But the 2 new films that I saw this week, Sentimental Value, Joachim Trier's new film starring Stellan Skarsgård, Renee Rensvig, or however you say her name, Elle Fanning. Literally mind-blowing. I wish I could have done a full episode on this film because it was just so much better than Wicked for Good. It's legitimately devastating, and it's so interesting to kind of learn about the drama and the trauma of your parents' lives or your family's lives, and kind of understand that you think everybody has it together, but realistically we're all kind of working through our own things and we all have our shortcomings, and there's things that we can't express because of ways we've been hurt in the past. And it was just such a gorgeous film. I wrote a super long letterbox review about it, so you can check it out there, but I gave it 4.5 stars, and it is now my 3rd favorite film of 2025. It was legitimately mind-blowing. So lovely. I want to rewatch Worst Person in the World to see which one I like better, but the final film of the week, The Running Man, the new Edgar Wright film, 2025 version, not the 1987 version, which I didn't have time to rewatch before I saw this one, but still, I have to say, look, the trailers, I was like, it looks kind of fun. You know, Glenn Powell could have a good time, and some of the action looked really good, but I haven't loved Edgar Wright's films in a little while. I think Last Night in Soho was mostly okay, but let me down in the end. It's a cool concept that I think doesn't fully pan out. Baby Driver, I've never really loved, so I was like, okay. I wasn't crazy about that one either, but I grew up loving Edgar Wright from Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. Those are still 2 of my favorite films of all time. I remember the first time I ever watched Hot Fuzz, I was being babysat by my friend's family, and my brother and I were there, and we were with our friends there, and it was just like, this is hilarious. This is insane. My family quotes it all the time. When's your birthday? February 22nd or whatever. What year? Every year. That's like a legendary quote in my house. But look, The Running Man. Edgar Wright has definitely lost the sauce a little bit. I think he is trying to find his form again, trying to find the right way to show his style in a 2025 way. This is a movie that definitely feels like there was some studio interference. I think there were some storylines, like, for example, Glenn Powell and his wife in the film. It's the actress from Sinners, and she was the mayor in The Batman, Bella Real. She's really good when she shows up, but she has one scene where she shows up for like 2 minutes and then she leaves right away, and we don't really see her the rest of the film until the conclusion. And it's just like, there was definitely something more here, but it doesn't really all connect together, and there's definitely a big emotional chunk missing. I thought it was pretty entertaining though, up to the 3rd act. The 3rd act, it really collapses, and it reminded me a lot of Bullet Train, is what I said in Letterboxd. How it just kind of keeps going, and I'm like, oh, this will be a fun 3rd action set piece, or oh, this will will be a fun solution. It just keeps going and going and going. It doesn't know when to stop. That being said, Glenn Powell is a goddamn movie star. He leads the hell out of this movie. I thought he was so much fun. Lee Pace, absolutely awesome. I want him to be in the Batman Part 2 as Talon if they do the Court of Owls. I stand by my fan casting from my YouTube video. But look, I gave The Running Man 3.5 stars because I had a genuinely good time. I went and saw it in AVX at Cineplex, and it was just a fun popcorn flick that I think there's a lot working against it, and this movie is getting in its own way, but a lot of the action was very fun. So yeah, 16 Candles, 2 stars, Wicked, 3 stars, Sentimental Value, 4.5, The Running Man, 3.5, but that has been what else I watched. And in fact, I think that is going to do it for episode 95, Wicked for Good. I know that some people will be messaging me and saying, wow, you gave a scathing review, or oh, you were so harsh on it. I get it. Look, I didn't love the first one, but I thought this was just a genuinely bad film, and I'm sorry, but of course, let me know what you thought down below. I would love to hear from you. As always, rate and review the show 5 stars wherever you get your great podcasts like Watcher of All Things, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Acast. We are, of course, an Acast-produced show. On Spotify, you can comment right underneath the episode, so drop your thoughts on Wicked for Good right underneath on Spotify. If you're on the YouTube channel, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when new YouTube videos and podcast episodes drop, but also comment right on this episode. What are you watching right now? What did you think of Wicked for Good? Is it one of the worst sequels you've seen, one of the best sequels you've seen? How does it add up to the stage adaptation? I'd love to know. Let me know. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can email us, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, and find me on social media. Instagram and Threads are just at Watcher of All Things. The TikTok account is at watcher.of.all.things. I post on social media every single day. Also follow my personal Letterboxd account, KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Follow me on there. Drop a comment under one of my reviews that you found me through the show, and I will follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, we have a fun one. I'm actually very excited for next week's movie, Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out story. This is the 3rd Knives Out film. I love the first Knives Out movie. Glass Onion I thought was okay, but I'm very excited for how this one looks. It's going to be a lot of fun, but for now, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all for the love and all the messages I get and the comments, all the engagement. I love hearing your guys' opinions. It's so cool hearing from you. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.